everyone. On behalf of CATS, Center for Advancement of Traditional Building Technology and Skills, I welcome all the speakers and each one of you to the Place Story session of Festival of Places 2021, jointly hosted by Indira Gandhi National Center for the Arts, New Delhi, and CATS. The Festival of Places is an initiative of CATS, a not for profit organization working in the area of heritage conservation, management, and advocacy since 2001. We have been working with a vision to highlight local heritage assets, empower local communities, and make heritage conservation participatory and sustainable. An effort such as ours requires technical and financial assistance as well as patronage. You can support and participate in our multiple initiatives and programs by volunteering your skills and contributing financially. Your donation, however small, can help us together contribute to the conservation and protection of our fast disappearing and unprotected and hitherto unknown heritage assets. Donations to CATS entitles donors to get a tax exemption under Section 80G of the Income Tax Act 1961. For volunteering your skills for your initiative, please write to us at info@catsindia.org. You can also support us by buying our heritage souvenirs that raise awareness about unprotected heritage assets in our cities and towns. Do visit Aresh, the Heritage Craft Collection, on our website www.indiaheritagehub.org. We at CATS feel very strongly about the dismal state of public spaces in our cities and firmly believe change in the way we think, talk, and use public spaces can only begin at the grassroots by creatively engaging people with places and empowering them to make a difference to the places and spaces around. The Festival of Places, an initiative by CATS, is an idea born out of the spirit of volunteerism to come together, collaborate, co-create, and celebrate places that nurture health, happiness, and foster community living. The Festival of Places aims to bring people, places, and memories and the interrelationships at the forefront of public discussion. It envisions to investigate places, the people who inhabit them, the collective and individual memories that are integral to places, and present them a new way to leverage discussions on the future of public spaces. The festival provides an opportunity to people for sharing their personal narratives. Moreover, the festival aims to help discover the much overlooked human dimension of spaces. The main highlight of the festival this year is Place Stories, a series of online storytelling sessions that help understand the hidden dimensions, multiple interpretations, and varied memories associated with places, highlighting their distinct characteristics as well as unraveling the bond that people have with them, a connection that lives through their experiences. The storytelling sessions by professionals, scholars, and students from diverse fields focuses on public spaces and have been planned around the theme of exploring memory in places. We begin this session of storytelling with the play story titled The Ruins of Hauz Khas. Our storyteller for the session, Ms. Arunima Agarwal, will be weaving her story around the ruins of Hauz Khas, a landmark urban place in Delhi, and will explore the plethora of spaces that the complex has to offer and how people over time have engaged with the spaces in their own ways. The place experts for the session, Ms. Rashmi Baluja Tandon and Ms. Nidhi Batra, will expand the narrative around Hauz Khas and reveal the multiple dimensions of the place. The session is going to bring forth some very interesting experiences, memories, and interpretations of Hauz Khas. Our storyteller Arunima is an architect by education, strategist by profession, and a storyteller by passion. She believes in a fluidity between professional and personal roles, highly intrigued with the correlation of social, cultural, political, and environmental factors on the design of the built, the unbuilt, and the business fabric. She believes that major changes and breakthroughs can be brought about by specific and smart ideation. Her narratives explore the subtle interaction of human emotions with available resources and spaces through the eyes of shifting perspectives. Her work translates this transformative quality both commercially and artistically to disrupt the known, thus creating alternate perspectives and businesses. Director at A.co, a business design and strategy consultancy, a mixed media artist, and a freelance writer, she strongly advocates the need for losing the attachment to fixed forms to be able to shape shift. Our first placed expert, Rashmi Baluja Tandon, is an architect and urban and regional planner involved in professional practice since 1998 and is a professor coordinator academics, Vastukala Academy, New Delhi. Having 17 years of teaching experience, he is currently pursuing PhD from School of Planning and Architecture. Her areas of interest are architecture, education, campus planning, and theory of architecture. Our second place expert, Nidhi Batra, is a development practitioner with over 15 years of experience in environmental urban design, skill development, and public policy. She is the founder of a platform of collaborative practices called Seheriti, It believes in participatory approaches towards shaping built and natural environment. Seheriti actively works on community engagement and awareness programs about cities and their environs. She is a consultant with the World Bank and National Skill Development Corporation and is a visiting faculty for Masters of Architecture programs in various colleges in Delhi NCR. After the play stories by our speakers, we will open the session for question and answers. Please write the questions in the chat box and we will take them one by one. Do let us know if you wish to ask the questions yourself. We now begin our excursion of horse cars with Arunima. Arunima?
Hi, today I'm narrating my memories of Hoskas village, whose depth I got to explore through this very platform of Festival of Places in 2017. And now it has been successfully bringing together various stakeholders to forge deeper bonds and meaningful engagements with our public spaces. Hope you enjoy this exploration as much as I did. Yeah.
Can I start the video, Arunima?
Yes, please.
Ruin, eldest daughter of Zeus, she blinds us all that fatal madness. She with those delicate feet of hers, never touching the earth, gliding over the heads of men to trap us all. No one and nothing escape the touch of death and decay, for all go to one place, all come from dust, and all return to dust. All that ever remains is a scattered legacy, a teasing memory, a subtle imprint, a telling tale, or a reticent mythology. Ruin is most commonly used as a verb, meaning to destroy or spoil. As a noun, ruin means the remains of a wrecked place, especially of a half standing building or city. The term ruin almost immediately brings forth the visuals of utter destruction, of grief, of pain, of ancient monuments, of the remains of what once flourished. Paradoxically, ruins hold a sense of yearning, a romanticism for the past, that of being more glorious than the present or the future can ever be. They are the deep hope while in despair. They are our knowledge source, paving a way into the future. They are the very foundation of everything that's yet to come. It is fascinating how these very symbols of destruction stand tall in their magnificence, constantly reminding us of the strength and beauty of this transient life. Everything flows and nothing abides. Everything gives way and nothing stays fixed. Ruins ground us, shedding light on the countless choices and possibilities available every moment to metamorphose into a thousand different entities, possibly still unknown to man at this very instant. They are explorative, dancing to their own tune, inciting a freedom within us like no other. They are a reliable ancestor, leading us fiercely and lovingly into the future unknown, warming our souls by the numerous stories they have encountered over their lifetime. Ruins hold a special place in my heart, for they are my anchor in time and existence, while I slowly drift away into the tangled landscapes of my imagination, navigating the lanes and bylanes, cities and countries. They are a portal into a world that feels more familiar, a world full of wonder, of connections, of recognition, and of a deep rest within those velvety mental realms. A world triggering our inherent memories of the numerous lives we have lived, exploring these structures in their full splendor. Or are they just triggers of that childlike imagination in these logic ridden brains of ours? Who is to say? Every act of creation is first of all an act of destruction. They say mystery is at the heart of creativity and that creative thinking is the spice of great innovation. There is no mystery stronger than those of the ruins, sitting strewn around with an uncertain past and an even more uncertain future. The only present they have is the perception we ascribe to them. Ruins are the champions of absolute creative freedom. They channel our sheer defiance of standard norms of construction and beauty by their very existence, showing us the path to our personal power and novelty. They help us realize that we are all equally undivided, not in spite of, but because of destruction. Ruin is wondrous and abundant. Destruction for her is a relative term and not necessarily an entirely pessimistic term. We exist because of our rules for evolution, for transmutation, for transcendence. Our creations probably ache to embody this very evolution of ideas, transmuting forms and materials, which sometimes transcend the prevalent to become an icon. Ruins are potent, underlining the power of individual choices behind creation, using which new things, whether buildings or social movements, can grow for those who can practice discretion. Ruins are wise masters, eager to teach the art of moving forward and building something new out of the rubble, only if we listen. A boon, a bane, ruins are an ensemble, steadily shifting shapes. Every time I encounter a ruin, I marvel at the probable energy expended, the thoughts born, the thoughts broken down at the time gone by, never to exist again, with only a faint nostalgia perfuming the entire space. What if these ruins are also a witness to the subtle loss of thoughts? The once lost in translation, for every word spoken is merely an attempt to convey the real truth. What if the ruins had their own voice, a language so profound they speak volumes through their silence? Thoughts pouring out of every crack, every crevice, every stone they have cast away, in resistance, in anger, in love, in hope, an eternal hope of being heard and felt deeply,
छींक आ रही है तो क्या
rather
करें?
than just being seen, nonchalantly conversing about how all things perish, how every ruin is another new ruin in progress. Though the world of ruins is vast, the term keeps bringing me back to the remains of Hoskas. It might be my geographic association or my penchant for the lost rulers of Delhi. Or maybe it's just Hoskas' modern relevance as a youth hotspot, serving as a hotbed for architects and photographers alike. The Hos is Urdu cast in stone and mortar, diffusing the same love and beauty into this place. The punctuated ruins still call out to us as a language ready to be re explored, as a plethora of spaces ready to be reimagined. Originally built by Alauddin Khilji to supply water to the inhabitants of Siri Fort, this reservoir witnessed a slow decline in its intended use, transmuting into water decks for exclusive gatherings, and more recently, into a manicured waterscape to capture Instagram worthy selfies against. The air still intoxicated with the sweet sublimity of the horse that was centuries ago. This place has now gained popularity for the entire cluster of severely gentrified Hoskas village, housing everyone's favorite cafes, boutiques, studios, and pubs for those evening chill scenes. With the spread of cafe culture, new joints have popped up in other ancient haunts as well, promising a more luxe experience. But Hoskas still stands strong and persists, even with its fluctuating target audience. Horse's magnetism is not something one can easily escape after all. The first time I actually visited the village was also probably for a casual catch up with a few friends, having momos and Maggie on some nondescript cafe's terrace overlooking the water reservoir. It soon turned into college weekend escapes, long photography walks, and spazzing by the arches of the ruined madrasa. The charm of Hoskas had started taking over. This further made way to celebrations and packed music gigs at social, where the structure leans on parts of the madrasa, adding an ancient charm to our lives, otherwise obsessed with the modern and the latest. This soon gave way to monthly strolls with friends at the deer park, soaking in the charm of the tiny structures sprawled across the place. Amidst the trees, a momentary recluse from the outside world. It's the new central place to assemble when there are people coming over from all directions. As Connaught Place once was, now that the metro, the highways, and expressways seem to converge here, as it were their natural habitat. Hoskas is already brimming and booming with infinite outlets, dying and rebirthing into a newer, shinier name every few months. In spite of these logistical considerations, the spirit of Hoskas still thrives loud and clear in the hearts of everyone alike. Ask anyone what draws them to the place, and the answer is very rarely the numerous food options or events around, but rather just the innocence, mystique, and intimacy of the mixed urban fabric of the place. I happened to have a fortunate opportunity of studying Hoskas in detail, and I soon figured the place has even more to offer than the beautiful photos, dense crowds, and mostly overpriced cafes. And the thought amuses me till now. I, of course, started where it had all begun, at the Hos, soon perceiving its ubiquity as a thriving micro ecosystem within the city. A small walk around the monument, and one can see the remains of the ancient aqueducts, which might had been the source of supply to the ancient palace and the royal villages. It was a part of the complex water drainage system and the bouleys all around the city, which are now a ruin themselves, housing parks, houses, roads, and the metro system instead. Though originally the brainchild of Khilji, the complex was renovated and expanded to house the famous madrasa by Firoz Shah Tughlaq. It was an attempt at promoting education in the Islamic prescribed ways, encouraging a settlement around this discharge of knowledge. It is interesting that though the madrasa is now inoperative, the village still boasts of a few institutes and NGOs working right behind the remains of this madrasa, dressed up in the more modern facades, ensuring there is a knowledge discourse still in progress. The village was a typical village that came up organically with all the development and remained so throughout the centuries until Bina Ramani came along in the late 1980s. At that time, it was a tiny, sleepy little village in the heart of South Delhi with this magnificent Mughal era aura around it. She wanted to open a store and soon realized that it could be turned into a beautiful hub of design and culture. In her words, it was her Goa in Delhi. She started a trend that spread like wildfire, attracting more investors, introducing glamour and immense cash flow into the village. The villagers started renting the upper floors of their houses, eventually selling these properties. These visually separate properties along the winding lanes are actually a maze of staircases from within, connecting and opening into various cafes and into their sometimes shared service areas. I chuckled over this clever use of the structures as I explored the various terraces and their vantage views of the halls and the madrasa, nestled in between the towering contemporary structures. Now, though the houses along the main streets have been converted into restaurants, art galleries, shops, and what not, there still exists an area of village houses renovated in concrete and bright colors hidden in plain sight, right behind these streets. The residents of which are the main service providers to the luxurious life of the entire area. The residents are mostly cheerful and appreciative of the work opportunities the development has brought about, but seem to be as frustrated as me with the mindless crowd that flocks the village. These ruins are the play areas for their young children, the grazing ground for their cattle, and sometimes are also the butcher points for their daily meal preparations, oddly reminding me of the Chor Minar, where severed heads of thieves were displayed on spears under Khilji's rule. Though most residents now are immigrants with only a handful of original resident families, they still take pride in the heritage of the village with a slight dismay over the lack of development within their area. The mysteries of this place are truly endless, like that of an onion. You peel a layer to find another new layer with a new viewpoint ready to be experienced. It is a microcosm of islands assembled into a big unit marked by the ancient ruins and the modern glades. The highlight of this exploration for me, undeniably, was the discovery of an ancestral cremation ground hidden right behind a dense tree cover at the entrance of the Rose Garden, where cremation of residents still take place, unknown to the numerous visitors, busy sharing their own presence in the village with their pretty geotags and hashtags. There is a fine line between how Hoskas is occupied by various different people, where the ruins more often than not act as mediators. The decked up couples line up with a photographer of their choice, waiting for the perfect photo between those arches, while the natives dry their clothes, conveniently taking aid of the now sealed arch. An ancient boundary wall separates the hinterland from the gentrified world of names and brands. The residents from around finish their daily exercises, meandering across the scattered ruins, while maintaining a safe distance from the infamous swarms of mosquitoes and the young couples proclaiming their love. The deer lays around their enclosure, while the peacock jumps around the branches, keeping a tab on the nilgais, the hogs, and the dogs, busy with their own exploration of these ancient grounds. Just like spring, the color of Hoskas changes from the stone walls to the massive concrete facades, to funky hues of greens and pinks in the village, to funkier graffiti walls adorning large faces. The buildings live together in harmony, equally busy with visitors, blurring the boundaries between the old and the new. Hawes holds an odd air of peace and pleasure amidst all this hustle bustle and dynamism. It's almost akin a lullaby, silently woven into its fabric by these wise ancestors, still standing strong and serenading their inhabitants throughout time. I look at these ruins and wonder how another person traverses these structures. Do they ever think about their loved ones? About the not so loved ones? The bothersome? The loathsome? The ordinary? About the people they have yet to meet? Does anyone imagine me imagining them? What if these ruins were once lovers themselves, flaunting the marks and inscriptions of everyone they have ever loved? Forever curious and passionate, they have raised numerous love children, fondly known as the myths and legends. Hoskas is a true example of ever evolving spaces that have come into existence almost organically and spontaneously. No one plans for a ruin, but one cannot deny the space, the importance, and the grace they claim. It's probably this unconscious existence, the power, the sheer audacity of a ruin that holds our imagination, exposing the limitations of the delicate thought structure we call our reality. Ruins are playful and inviting, fueling our innermost fantasies to remember the immensity of prospering emotions hidden in the ruins of our memories. These are the same emotions and memories whose correlation gives us a unique perspective, making us relate to spaces uniquely, asserting individualistic experiences. Our imagination breathes magic into the ruins of our past, where the dilapidated structures silently question if this past is really our past or is it just an impression of our present and our future. Ruins like us, after all, live in the hope of becoming a memory.
Many thanks, Arunima, for this very, very interesting, take on ruins. In fact, the way you have beautifully brought out the contradictions that are there in Hoskas is very remarkable. And now I would like to invite Rashmi to please share her experiences and memories about Hoskas.
Yeah. Thank you, Urvashi. Before I come down to my experiences and memories, I have just tried to jot down my thoughts related to this, and I'll very quickly read out those before I come to my own part. So give me this chance to read this. So in the last 20 years, the Hoskas village has undergone rapid development together with the expansion of Delhi itself. The identity of Hoskas has evolved from a historic village to an important center for leisure and commerce. On one hand, the archaeological ruins adjacent to the settlement makes the village very interesting tourist destination, and on the other hand, all the retail and cafes attract the locals and the foreigners. The settlement is primarily residential in character, surrounded by posh residential colonies in the vicinity. The character is balanced by the prevailing commercial street and the greens in the form of parks and gardens. Originally, the Hoskas village used to be predominantly two-story settlement, but in last few years, due to rapid commercialization, the height of the built form has gone up, and the result of having the same narrow streets with higher housing has caused several problems. Hoskas has kept alive its character and peculiarities and is a unique example of how an urban village can be smartly converted from rural to urban without destroying and losing its heritage and identity. This space definitely qualifies as one of the vibrant places of Delhi, full of opportunities congenial for human experiences. They qualify a special category and continue to draw our attention multitudinally by providing more than one reason to visit this place again and again. The place for sure has a magnetic power to attract people from all walks of life, and the nature of commuters with respect to age, sex, and occupation keeps changing all throughout the day, starting from the early morning walkers to college students, to high gentry crowd for shopping, to Indian and foreign tourists visiting the monument, etc. All the characteristics provide a sense to interpret the space and experience it differently when compared to several other urban villages in Delhi. The Hoskas has its merit to reconnect people with places and memories. Heritage Division of INTAC and DDA executed the Hoskas Lake Restoration Project. The project uses recycled water from the neighboring sewage treatment plant to fill a 700-year-old lake which had been lying dry for almost 4 decades. The project not only impacted on elevating the groundwater table, but also in revival of natural environment of the lake, including the renewed presence of water birds and the flora and fauna of the entire space. Though it was not easy to convince the residents around the lake about the benefits of the project was functional somewhere in 2003, and since then there has been a phenomenal transformation of the village ruins. So I think whatever Arunima has included is what we see now in last 2 decades primarily. But I would like to, after I finish with this, I would like to highlight on my experiences, which are almost 2 decades old. The entire complex historically comprised of water tank, Islamic seminary, a mosque, a tomb, and a few pavilions. Madarsa, as they call it, it was constructed in 1352 and was one of the leading institutions of Islamic learning in the Delhi Sultanate. It was considered the largest and best equipped Islamic seminary in the world, and Delhi was known for best Islamic education after Baghdad. The double-story madrasa was L-shaped structure. The village surrounded the madrasa was called Tarababad, which means city of joy. The water tank was excavated during the reign of Alauddin Khilji in order to meet the demands of water supply and water needs of the city, Siri. The tank measured 123 acres and was considerably reduced due to siltation, modern development, colony settlements, and land encroachments. Firoz Shah Tughlaq is known for his interest in innovative architecture, which is evidently visible in the existing monuments, mosques, and palaces constructed in his reign. During the 1980s, the Hoskas village area was re-established into an upscale residential and commercial complex, but the monuments remained untouched and unprotected. This place showcases light and sound show narrating the history of the complex. Deer Park is also a destination which attracts large masses. The entire Hoskas area is fringed with numerous art galleries, furniture and antique stores, elite restaurants and cafes, and expensive boutiques. Hoskas is the perfect blend of history and modernity. Street Art Delhi has organized and hosted a month-long street art festival in the past. Hoskas for sure occupies the integral part of our city, Delhi, full of life, rediscovering the lost glory and allowing the culture to nurture with unique creativity. The place can be further reimagined as an important public space. The heritage of such places can become the nucleus of development. It should be considered as an opportunity to prepare a model to create guidelines or toolkit to guide growth in similar potential areas. The historicity of the place should not be considered as a constraint to development, rather as an opportunity for growth. We need to educate and change the attitude of the community so that it starts to take ownership of built heritage rather than feeling alienated towards it. So I would just like to mention and share some of my experiences. Actually, almost 20 years ago, I started my teaching career in this small village. So as Arunima also pointed out, this place has few institutes. And there is one very famous institute, JD Institute of Fashion Technology, which also has an interior design department. So now it's like a full-fledged, very elaborate institute. But in 20 years ago, I think in 1980s, when Beena Ramani and Rohit Bal were starting with their fashion boutiques in the village, that was the time the owner of this institute, Mr. R.C. Dalal, he also collaborated with him, with these people, and they came up with this institute. Though it was a Mumbai-based institute, but they started in Delhi with the first branch. So Havaska still remains as their headquarter branch, and they have many such franchisee branches, not only in India, but even in UK and Dubai. So that is the place where I started teaching, and I was visiting this place primarily every day. And my experiences then and now are, I mean, when I compare the transformation of the place, it's like phenomenal. There was no parking space. Like now when we go, we have a big parking, huge parking area on the left side of the village. But 20 years ago, it never existed. We used to park on the main road, and the parking used to start from the temple, that South Indian temple, to the Deer Park gate. So people used to just find out space wherever they could and would park there. And maybe the MCD was controlling all that. I don't know, but there were hardly any people to guard your belongings and your car over there. And that used to be a scary kind of a place where like a lot of crime also prevailed. And I'm highlighting this because I still remember when I was once I parked my car right very away from the entry of the village, and I had to walk down the entire space, and I was carrying my laptop and few books to show to the students. So I left my bag and under the car seat. And when I returned, the central lock was broken and my bag had gone. And then we had to go to Hoskas village, Hoskas, sorry, police station to report. And this was like a routine thing which I was not aware of. And that time, this crime kind of a thing used to prevail. But nowadays, I think things are much better because it's not no more a secluded place, and it's like you see lot of activity happening. So all those things have I think it's not happening now. Another thing which I feel, which even Arunima has pointed out, this whole place actually initially used to have a lot of fashion boutiques, and every second house, every second building used to be a fashion boutique or an antique store. But now, after, if like all of you could just recall, there was this fashion store which came up on 1MG Road, on Mehrauli Gurgaon Road, which was again an illegal construction, but all these designers moved their stores to that building. So that was the time this major shift happened, and the stores were relocated. And because the owner of these places, they started charging high rentals. So now, and slowly and gradually, initially they started with the renting out their spaces, and then they sold out and moved out. And now what we see, there are certain, primarily this place is like inhabited by either the Jats or the Muslims. And there are few communities which are staying for long, and they still have their own cattle. As you were showing in your images, Arunima, I could recall there were like these places where like cattle used to exist even then. and those small crooked lanes were always very tight. And because this institute where I was teaching was scattered all over, there were like 2 rooms in one lane and 2 rooms on the other lane. We had to walk down to different rooms for different classes, and in between the hours, especially during the winters, we used to come out on the streets and try to look for some sun, and would chit chat amongst all the, I mean, we were not sitting in the staff rooms then, and we were just loitering around in the village. And that was the time I got chance to explore all these streets and different. We would just window shop all these shops and the antique stores, and that was quite fun. But yeah, even then, these high profile stores existed, and even now it is being maintained. But the cafes are definitely a new phenomena, which is not more than 15, 18-year old. Now we see so many cafes and fine dining restaurants happening. And but there was one very famous restaurant, Bistro. I am sure many of you must have heard of. Bistro used to happen in the main premise, and it was facing the lake. So, but it had to close down because of the fire reasons. And after that, it never happened. They used to have a rooftop restaurant also, and so many other cuisines they were serving, but it had to close down. But the Park Baluchi in the Deer Park, which had won so many awards, still exists. It's like a singular building in the premise of the Deer Park, which still exists. So this is something about the cafes and how they grew. And I also remember that these areas were like one would know each other because we were just moving around, and we had started to know the common local people, and we would acknowledge each other, we would greet each other. And this reminds me of some small towns and small cities where, because there were these bangle seller who was living there in one of the streets, and we would just go down, and he would be putting all the bangles on his thela to take it down to the main roads. But we don't see all those bangle sellers on the Delhi roads that often. Maybe the Friday market or those weekly markets have those kind of bangle sellers and those kind of things in the markets, but normally we have proper shops. So that was quite, but later on in these 15, 18 years, I see that same Bengal seller has transformed into a big Bengal shop. So now it's like a very high end kind of a thing, and you don't find anything which a tailor would be selling you for peanuts. So everything is like scaled up phenomenally. So these kind of memories exist. And also, if like all of you have been there, on the right side there is one Domical building which is called Lokayata, and it's like an art gallery, very famous art gallery. So this art gallery was actually initially owned by archaeology department, and then it was gifted to famous English writer Muluk Rajanand. And this even now the art gallery is run by under his name. So this for last 20 years, and for some time our institute where I was teaching, they used to hold classes there. It's a beautiful place, and lot of graffiti and wall paintings and street art actually even enhances it further. It's like worth going once. And it's not only this art gallery, there are a few other art galleries which I happened to visit some last 2 years back, when, and they actually host some international artists. And those people who have that taste would definitely have in past visited and have had a chance to, and they have those experiential walls. I mean, what any other good art galleries around the world would have, those kind of facilities are there in these art galleries. And again, I would like to mention one thing. I think this is a place which is allowing all kinds of people park. There is an open gym, which like normally the in Delhi, lot many parks have those open kind of gym where like those equipment have been installed. So people use and enjoy that part, and they have a good, very beautiful terrain in the Deer Park and around the lake where like people go for morning walks. And then they have a lot of laughing clubs and meditation clubs and yoga classes happening every day. Besides that, in the main street where like we have these cafes, there is a small place where like you have these mystery rooms for children. So otherwise normally you would find the place to be for the teenagers or the college crowd to hang out, but this place actually allows all age group to cater to. So it's like a beautiful thing. So all this is all from my side, and I think over to you, Urvashi. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Rashmi, for sharing your memories about Hoskas. And I think you very rightly pointed out, the safety and security, which has been a major concern with such spaces. Nidhi, would you want to add to this narrative? And maybe I think we can talk more about the ecological aspect and significance of Hoskas.
Sure. Arunama, first of all, I think I want to congratulate you. Really loved the way you presented, and the way you spoke about ruins and about layering, about onion. I think that's a very great metaphor that you used, and you spoke about memory and the ruin, and you did cover a lot of what Hoskas, how it has evolved over time, and through your images and all of that. I think that's really it's a good work that you've really done. And in respect to Hoskas, I think it's a public space for many of us, right? And it's for me, I'll begin with my memory and where my association of this place started. And so it was right in my childhood, and it starts from the Deer Park. So my father is very fond of nature, and he would take us to the Deer Park as kids, and now he take our kids to Deer Park. So that's like a ritual that happens since over the time. So that was the first introduction to Hoskas. And were we interested in the monument, or did we understand madrasa or other tombs then? Probably not. But of course, this whole, seeing something old and a relic or a ruin is very attractive. In contrast to the sense of newness. So that was, okay, yeah, there's something which is old, and there is something which we can see, but then there is this Deer Park, and that time the lake wasn't clean, and there wasn't much activity there, but we did associate it with the park and the deer and the garden. Thereafter, like yourself, probably, there was an experience in the architectural college, right? So you start hanging around in the Hoskas, now in the ruins, as a more like a public space. Again, that time, even though the Hoskas village was transforming and gentrifying, we really did not have the monies to really be hanging out in the Hoskas so much. So it was really the ruin space that one would spend the time or the evening with friends. And thereafter, professionally, yes, one started studying the ecological understanding of the place. What is the role of the role which of the lake it had in terms of serving water for the precinct, how it completely got lost. And I think Rashmi also covered the project of water regeneration, which happened in this area. So the water is obviously not fit for drinking as it was in the earlier times. It is an STP treated water coming from Sanjeevan, etc. But at least the lake has been rejuvenated. But now the lake is almost like Urvashi, you mentioned, it's a celebratory thing. It's a notional aspect which is there in Hoskas. I think, and then much later in time, I think so. I did an event called Share Mehfil with another colleague in Antisocial in Hoskas, and you covered Antisocial as one of the spaces. And I found that quite unique, So this was an event where we wanted to talk about cities, almost like this platform. And we were wondering that how do we take these discussions outside the domain of IIC and Habitat Center, where probably only the elite visit. And we thought, okay, let's try another place. And we went to this place in Hoskas, Antisocial. We've, of course, the environment of Hoskas is very romantic for all architects and conservationists and anybody who's interested in city, but you don't know if everybody's going to come to Hoskas, right? So you don't know if your elders or seniors in profession would come, because you don't really see a lot of elderly crowd in Hoskas even now. So you have a lot of youth in the evening, or you have a lot of women doing their kitty parties in the afternoon. You don't really see a lot of and now some events where some intellectual discussions on the art galleries or open houses are they coming. But this kind of space which could give you a bridge between everyone was very, very special, I think. And that's what exciting about How Huskars, that it is trying to be that inclusive space. And to add on to that, I would like to quote something about Delhi, and it goes back to what you were doing in your layering concept. So Delhi ka, matlab, there's this one share कि जब दिल्ली उजड़ती है तभी बसती है. So Hoskas is pretty much like that, you know. So it has so many layers over time, but every time it is developing. And then another two important, I think, quotes for me is that comparing Hoskas to a palimpsest, almost like what are the traces of the old that you keep seeing in it, such that, you know, way Arunima, you mentioned that the past becomes present, it becomes the future. That's what these traces or these monuments do. And how Aldo Rossi calls it, you know, so these monuments become so important in our city, and they get into this realm of memory when they no longer are functioning or doing the so-called particular use that they planned for. So I'm not sure if I, as even an architect or a designer or even a person who's experiencing, am I so interested in the use of what the Hoskas complex monuments had? Or am I more interested in the form of it? Am I more interested in the activities which are happening in the Hoskas village? And I think that's what Rossi compares to the sense of time, the sense of memory, the sense of permanence, which remains, you know, so the functions or the uses might keep changing, but these kind of monuments or permanence in the city is what gives you the stories that we are discussing right now. So you have been able to form your own association. I have been able to form my own. Rashmi had a very different kind of story. And I think that's what's special about these places, right? That they become a part of a narrative. Our narrative is different, and probably, like you said, that the narrative of the residents might be very different. So we are looking as an outsider. We like this juxtaposition of newness and a sense of old, a sense of environment, a sense of, you know, the birds flocking, etc. And the residents are experiencing it very differently. And I think that's what Urvashi, I think your program is trying to celebrate, and I'd like to congratulate all of you for that. Yeah, so that's it from me.
Okay, thank you, Nidhi. In fact, you very rightly, pointed out, it's a very, very complex situation, and I would say, I think Hoskas and the space around it actually represents what's going on in our cities in a microcosm. The way we are, different layers of society are kind of, at some places there is, smooth transition. At some places there are frictions, and all those complexities, contradictions can be clearly seen in what is happening in Hoskas. And I think it is one of those very unique scenarios where we have a romanticized past, and on the other hand, we have an uncertain future. So basically, I will now just open the floor for some questions on that note. And Soumya, do you have any questions from the audience? And if somebody wants to ask a question directly to the speakers, they can do so.
There are no questions as of now. If anybody wants to ask anything, you can unmute yourself and ask.
If I am Ujjan Ghosh, if I'm allowed to make a couple of comments, I don't have questions.
Sure.
I was looking forward to it. I was a little out of circuit for a while, but I'm fit enough today to sit in front of it. I'm really enjoyed it. The way Arunima started this thing was really, really, I would say I really enjoyed it, and the way it's going, Nidhi now completing her bit. I know, of course, Nidhi is our student, our colleague. Anyway, I think I will share a little bit because I think I am really history here. My story is of 70, so 50 decades. So I beat everyone here. When I came from a village in Orissa where I grew up to study architecture in SPA, and now what I'm now, but I remember going to Hoskas in a class group with Professor Jawala to sketch, and I still have one of the sketch I made that time. I got 9 out of 10. And later I made a watercolor to teach my daughter of the same thing. That also both hangs. And I find, now coming to contemporary, these very dynamic thing we have just seen, Actually, there are three things, this famous shopping center, I was shopping and commercial place of transformed village, the monuments, and the other side there is a typical slum. It is just the other side. It is unauthorized colony. And my current experiences are from my students. I teach urban design for last 38 years, and at least must have heard a dozen time presentation on this area, its transformation, its history, and everything else. But my personal experience, I think this monument part, I don't know, I haven't been there for a while, but I have gone in a group. That's the only student group. Rest of the time I've gone is with, I won't say girlfriends, but women companion. I think it is a private, same time a very public place. It's romantic, as they keep saying. Romantic has different words, meanings, but I'm saying the true sense of romance. And the couples show that. It's a fantastic place. How maybe it's a little overcrowded. No, I haven't been there a while. When I went there, it was pretty nice. I haven't been to the commercial place. You will all be surprised. I've never been there, and I don't intend to go there. And I've gone to that other unauthorized side, or whatever you call it, the slum side, for some reason. And I feel they are not really related. This transformation did not happen because this important history was there. The people who went to the boutiques and shops, they seldom visited the history, So it is not because of that. It is totally different theory, which I taught in IIM, I was told about. It's a case study in most IIMs, Hoskas village. At the same time, the slum in the other side is not because of neither the village commerce nor the monument. So there's three things happening there for very different reasons and important reasons. And as someone said, that it shows how our cities are normally. Great place it's a great sort of a laboratory. It's a learning place for everyone, whether you are an economist or an ecologist. This is the place to go to. But anyway, I think what you guys have started is the first one I was told. I will look forward to the second one. Fantastic initiative by a group of you. Professor Rashmi, I actually don't know you much, but what you told is almost so detailed and sounded like a very good presentation by somebody who have studied this area for, sometimes a good student presentation, don't take it otherwise, but very informative. Thank you. Sorry. Thanks for giving me all the time.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So Arunoma, would you like to add something to the conversation? Some bit that you would want to share with us?
I'm really enjoying the narratives and the experiences shared by Rashmi ma'am and Nidhi ma'am and sir, because I have only seen Hoskas village growing after like 2010, but it's always nicer to know in reality how it was before and like hear firsthand experiences from people. And I think that's what I really enjoyed about exploring Hoskas village through Festival of Places. And during that entire research project, um, I think my favorite part and my favorite memory is talking to the people in Hoskas village, whether it was the boutique owners, whether it was the tattoo artist, whether it was the managers at socials, whether it were random bartenders, whether it were the um, keepers, and whether it was the slum people when I went there. I think I actually made friends with most of the slum kids and most of these women in the slum who wanted to study. So I actually enjoyed how there's a certain layering to the village right now, and how when you see the village, when you enter the village, it's extremely glamorous. It's extremely aspirational. Everyone wants to be there. Everyone wants to take a selfie there or go visit a pub there or a cafe there or hold events there or attend events there, whether it's at socials, anti-social, anywhere. But then as you start moving inside, as you start interacting with more people in the other bylanes, whether it's the other tattoo studios, whether it's the other boutiques, or whether you move inside and go to the slum side of it. So the stories of people change, their associations with the place changes, and the aspiration we see at the very entrance, which is very Instagram worthy, very urban, very chic, it changes into different needs and wants from those people from this village about how they're using or how they relate to the ruins, or how they relate to these buildings, or how it's just a place of work for quite a few people, and they don't really see like they enjoy working there, but they don't really see the hype around it because it's a workplace for them, or whether it's the people in the village for whom it's literally their house, and how they interact with spaces very differently, and how it's more of a nuisance for them because there's too much crowd, or there's too much noise, but how that same uh, larger crowd or the same amount of noise is actually uh, uh, something that attracts more people from my generation, or like from my friend circles. And the other thing I actually enjoy about Hoskas Village is that it's a microcosm in itself. It's an ecosystem, and it's very self-sustaining, and there's everything present there. And as Nidhi ma'am spoke about, everyone has something to do in Hoskas Village, and it's very inclusive, and it's very public as well as it's very private, because you find your own rhythm with the village and you move in your own rhythm. Everyone else is moving in their own rhythm. So it's not somewhere where you have to be in tune with each other. You can just be yourself. You are still in the crowd, but you're still very yourself, and you still have your own zone. And I think it's because of how mixed the characteristic is, and how the romanticism of the ruin of the madrasa and of all the other smaller monuments around, how they actually encourage having these small buffer zones where you can lose yourself into. Because even in the park, whether it's the deer park, whether it's the rose garden, whether it's the side of the deer park that's more accessed from the residences around. So like we can actually see different zones of activities happening. People are cycling, or people are doing yoga, people are using those gym equipments, or people are just walking around taking photographs. There are picnics happening. There are younger crowds towards the main Hoskas village entrance, where they are just more interested in taking photographs. And it's it's still like it gives you so much to imagine about, so much to dream about, and so many narratives to think about. Like, even if I view the village in a certain way, it always has the scope to transform into a newer experience for me every time I visit that space, depending on which path I take or which area I want to be in. So I think it's a very interesting mix of how the development has taken place over all these years, or even all these centuries, and how this place is still thriving and still changing. So that's my take from it.
Thanks, Arunama. Yeah, I think the Hoskas is also interesting in that sense that it is about how you approach the place. There are so many entries into Hoskas, the village, the commercial area, and the ruins and the lake itself. So your entire perspective changes on and actually defines the user group also. Certain category of people will actually enter Hoskas from a particular entrance point. So in that sense, there are these pathways of users which are very clearly demarcated in that area. And two, three things that come to my mind about Housecasts is that things that can be actually done to integrate the spaces in a much more efficient manner. One is the fact that the structure, the entire ruins are protected by the ASI. But unfortunately, it's a paradox. The lake was always a part of the madrasa. In fact, if you go and you see, there are steps which are coming down from the madrasa to the lake. But the paradox right now is that the ASI, in order to control the entire campus, has only one access from the village side. So if you want to get down the steps of the madrasa and approach the lake as the people in older times would have done, that's not possible right now. I think that is something which needs to change, because most of the monuments when you visit through entry gates and it's a compound. But Hotskars is a very unique scenario where the monument merges with the urban fabric without any well-defined boundaries. So I think that is something which needs to be explored, and it requires a complete change in the way we look at protected monuments. So trying to integrate seamlessly with the surroundings, something which makes it more vibrant, more active, rather than just putting boundaries and just for the sake of security. I think there can be better ways of managing that space in terms of connection between, as Russ sir rightly pointed out, that most of the people will come to the village, will never go to the ruins. They might not be even depending upon the purpose of the visit, they will visit all these different spaces within the large Hoskas area. The other thing that also comes to my mind is that these very informal networks of mobility within Hoskas, if you see, it is surrounded by the outer ring road, by the roads almost on all the four sides. But there are also these informal connecting pathways which the villagers take while they go about their daily chores. They cut across these public open spaces. There are people who are from the Green Park site will cut across the open space. Kids will take their bicycle right down the entire area and connect to the other side of the Hoskas complex. So I think these are potential areas which can be really tapped into by allowing people to actually use this non-motorized mode of transport and integrate these open spaces with the larger city to bring in more purpose to the whole thing. And also, when I was strolling around Hoskas as part of the research project, I realized that the madrasa and the few tombs and the pavilions that we see today are just the tip of the archaeological heritage that is there. I have personally seen many wells inside the village itself, as well as within the open space area. And there are a number of these archaeological sites which are covered by mud and dirt. And these are areas which are potential areas. So I think there is a need to expand the narrative of Hoskas by going beyond just the madrasa complex and the few, the larger structures. So that is something which can add more meaning about the historical past of the place, and will be more engaging for the people, especially the younger generation who are coming to that area. To if we have the right kind of interpretation for those, archaeological remains as well. So that's what I would like to add to the story. And Soumya, are there any questions?
There's one more question. Yeah, ma'am.
Yeah.
So the question is from Pawan Sharma. If you want to unmute yourself and ask.
Yes, good evening, everyone. I was just having the question that any ASI sections are there, like that they are having some 100-meter protected zone and restricted zones. Are there any problem to the developments around because of these ASI sections? I mean, what is the status generally? Just wanted to know only.
So if you would like to take the question, maybe Rashmi, Arunama?
Yeah, any can.
So the rules which apply to any other archaeological site applies here. I think within 100 meter, you cannot build anything. So that also is like true for this site also.
That doesn't apply to this. That's okay. Thank you.
But the contradiction is that you find that all the cafes are actually cheap and wow with the heritage structure. There's not even an inch of space between, so we can't say the boundaries are completely merging.
Right.
There's no 100 meter, there, no 200.
And also the fire safety norms are not being complied.
Exactly. I think the Supreme Court ruling had talked about Hoskas village as a ticking time bomb. So even a fire tender is hardly can enter the village area in case of any
increase in land value. So these problems are emerging. That's the thing that's they're taken care. Like you're saying, narrow lanes and all these firefighting norms. So these with the passage of time, these things will emerge, but they have to be taken care also.
Yeah, but the challenges with such kind of urban villages is that the normal building regulations do not apply to such areas, and there are a lot of other pressures and factors that are going into, creating this kind of complex situation of problems, which is very, I would say challenging both for ASI to manage and as well as, for the development authorities to manage the entire, the open space and the village area.
That's true. Thank you.
Yeah. Soumya, any more questions?
No, ma'am, that is it.
Okay. So I think with this we come to the end of this session. I would like to thank Arunima, Rashmi and Nidhi for sharing their stories, experiences, memories and learning with us. The next play story session titled House of Leaves is scheduled for 17 January 2021 from 5 p.m. onwards. Our storyteller for the session, Ms. Parda Mehta, will be narrating her experiences and memories around Dr. Ram Manohar Lohia Park in Saibabad. She will take us around the place and explore the different ways in which people connect with the park and why such places are so special. The place expert for the session, Mr. Vikas Kanodia, Chairperson IUDI DNCR, will expand the narrative around Lohia Park and bring out the significance and essence of the place. The session is going to bring forth some very interesting experiences, memories, and interpretations of such public spaces. So stay tuned for our upcoming play story. The registration links for the next session will be shared shortly. Once again, I personally thank each one of you for your participation and support to the Festival of Places. Look forward to meeting all of you again next Sunday, same time, same place. Till then, stay safe and stay happy.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.